Becoming pop stars. Becoming upstarts.
Should agents be on call 24/7? Should clients be on call 24/7? Welcome to Meet the Agent podcast. I'm Wendy Clare of Juge Interiors in the Central Coast. I'm so thrilled to introduce to you another coastie. Tonight we meet Skye MARSENY of the agency Central Coast. Welcome to Meet the Agent podcast, Skye. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Wendy. I'm stoked to be here.
Let's jump in. I'm very keen to get to know you because this is our first time meeting, but I've seen you sell rural properties such as Jillaby in the Central Coast. I'd love to start by asking you, what do you love doing when you're not doing real estate?
Oh, that's a great question, because it does, as we're talking about here with boundaries, take up a lot of your time. I think if I'm not doing real estate or anything real estate related, I'm generally taking downtime. Yeah, I'm taking time for myself, spending time with my doggos,
Me too.
spending time at the beach. Love the beach. I'm close to it, so that's super, super lucky for me. So yeah, simply just taking time out really is what I enjoy to do if I'm not doing real estate, which is rare.
I'm getting that sense from everyone. So yeah, there's a lot of issues we've got to dig into. I mean, are you actually a coastie and are you from a rural background, or is this something very new to you being out in the country?
So I've been on the coast for just over 15 years now. So not born and bred here. I was actually born in the Blue Mountains in Katoomba.
Wow.
Yeah, so a bit of a country setting there. And I did spend quite a number of years living on a rural property in northern New South Wales in a suburb called Murwillumbah on 150 acres. So definitely have a passion for the rural setting. And I think that's what led me in to pursue that as a niche area of real estate that I was passionate about. And look, it's just become an obsession more than a passion now. I still do a bit of residential when it comes about, but definitely heavily focused and embedded into the prestige rural setting.
Yeah, when I looked tonight, I thought, gosh, I wish I could escape there right now. Like especially when you've had a hard day, it's like, yeah, I just want to run away to the country. It
Right.
actually
And what a
seems
gift and a pleasure to be able to spend time out on these properties all day. Like, it's something that I'm very, very grateful to be able to do on a daily basis. I get to be in the open space and the open air and amongst all of these beautiful rural properties in wonderful settings all throughout the Central Coast. It's an absolute dream. Love it. Love what I do.
Yeah, I think too, solitude is a little underrated. I'm a dog mom too, and I love walking my dogs, but sometimes I just want to be nowhere with them and just have that time to walk and think myself. And it's impossible to escape. Another dog person going, "Hey, Wendy," because they all see me all the time and know me and they want to chat. And yeah, it's very appealing to me, the idea of Jillaby. And I was saying to you earlier, actually, I don't know why, but when I was at Design Center and more doing my interior design diploma, I discovered by chance that many of the professors or teachers there, as you'd say, are part-time coasties living in Jillaby. So they've got a whole acre and they've got all this space to just do their whole dream home. And I thought,
I think COVID spiked that a lot too. I think people's priorities changed a lot through COVID. We saw huge growth in the appeal for lifestyle properties, and the Central Coast made sense for a lot of people that were living in small suburban properties throughout Sydney. And there was a bit of fear there about, the lockdowns and, oh my gosh, and how long can this go on? And I think that definitely grew the appeal for, what we want more. We want more space. We want to possibly, grow a veggie garden and have some animals and possibly, look at having multiple families live on the one property and all of those elements that lifestyle property offers. I think that really grew after and throughout COVID when people, experienced that experience as we all did. Seems
we
like it
all
was
did.
a lifetime ago now, but I think that definitely fed into the appeal of the areas of the Jillaby Valley and the Yarramalong Valley,
That's
and seeing
really
those properties
interesting.
spike. Mm,
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like if I was in sociology, I'd love this, how our
mm,
desires change. Like if,
mm,
in interior design now, we're talking a whole lot more about having, cozy nooks and spaces like that because people really moved away from wanting open plan. And
mm,
also what you're saying, that the area suddenly became a whole lot more alluring. And it's all
mhm,
just psychology, isn't it? I remember when I was in the States, I was doing a lot of traveling, meetings between New York and Washington, D.C. And I mentioned to someone or another, I was, offered the chance to maybe have a visiting scholarship style position at Harvard, and this person said, "Oh, Harvard's a backwater," And I thought, what? But if you're in Washington D.C., Boston had a different feel at Harvard. I mean, it's interesting because I'd never thought of Jillaby. I'd never heard of it. It sounds to me like it's just somewhere out in the country. But now I've discovered your social media. I think, oh gosh,
mm.
this is a real happening place. So it changed. I mean, I was totally wrong in thinking of it as, say, a backwater, right? It's Harvard.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, it's funny you say that because it's sort of, you don't know unless you know, right? There's particular areas that sit a little bit closer to Sydney that people are more familiar with. And, Jillaby, again, it sort of became strongly recognised, I feel, throughout that COVID period where people were searching for space on the Central Coast in that type of setting. And there's some beautiful suburbs throughout both of those valleys, like Wyong Creek, Yarramalong, Duralong. There's many, but Jillaby, I think it's a really convenient location as well. It sits just at the back of the Wyong town centre there, which is booming as well. Got lots of
Really?
cafes and restaurants and things that have opened up over the last few years there, and it's continuing to develop. So that supports those valleys there as far as your everyday sort of, shopping and groceries and public transports and going out for dinner and things. So it is rural, but you're very well connected back to all of the
Mm,
infrastructure that you would be used to living in a more residential setting. Yeah.
right. Yeah. It's
Best of
just
both worlds, really.
yeah, I suppose it's like Byron, people who were wanting to move to Byron are actually moving to that hinterland area rather
Mhm,
than
mhm,
wanting to be, right in the center where it's got more busy, it's got more, touristy, etc., right? So they're saying,
mhm, mhm.
Terrigal's getting busier and busier.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and I think people, can really appreciate now that yes, you want to be connected and yes, you want to be accessible to those things that you've grown to love, but are really appreciating being a little bit more removed and a little bit slower, a little bit quieter, whether that be for the growth of a young family or at the other end of life, at a more retirement stage. It's sort of time to pull back and slow down a little bit and explore those lifestyle factors that living in a rural setting offers you, right? Having those beautiful overflowing vegetable gardens and tapping into eco living and living off the land and things like that.
That does sound very appealing. So I also love to ask, and I think, you've kindly jumped in very last minute to wing it with me tonight, but is there style of music or a music star or song that you feel is most like you and your style?
Oh, that's a good question. I like a broad array of music, but I think in my day-to-day work, like if I need something as a pep up or, heading out to an important appointment, you know what it is? It's Sisters Are Doing It for Themselves,
Oh,
Eurythmics. It's
I
just one
love
of those
that.
songs
Yes.
that I look like the crazy person in the car probably if you were driving alongside
She
me.
got a blazer like armor, red
Because
soul
I'm
thunder on
bouncing
the
and I'm
tire,
singing
bullpen tucked like a dagger, closing deals with a side-eye smile.
and I'm tapping the steering wheel, and it just really elevates my vibration and my energy.
In the room, got the keys like a weapon, click clack, boom boom, you're
And I just feel so powerful and can take on the world and do
Stroke a
anything.
fade.
It's definitely one of my faves when it comes to that sort of setting.
Oh, that is fantastic. Annie Lennox, I miss her. I miss her now too,
Yeah,
right?
I
When you
think
said
we all do.
music.
He's a legend, right? That I think that era of music definitely yeah, represents me quite well. You know, Fleetwood Mac, Eurythmics. I love that sort
Yeah,
of era.
I can feel a bit of an Annie Lennox vibe coming from it. I saw on your Insta one of the shots I really loved, as well as the one with the, kind of country hat, which was gorgeous. You look gorgeous in that, but the lovely sort of feel of the country. But I like the one of you in the suit. Do you
Oh
know the
yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah,
It's,
yep.
people listening, go and check her out. It's very nice, and it's a like I take no BS kind of look. I was like, yeah, she's in charge. She's gonna have it all going on.
Well, good. So the image portrayed exactly what we wanted it to.
It did, but then the country style sort of softened it quite a lot, where I felt, I could give you a call last minute and say, hey, Skye, you want to jump on our podcast right now? But yeah, speaking of which, it's quite ironic. I pulled Skye in tonight, everyone, because, I needed a fill-in last minute. And ironically, the title that we planned, Boundaries, Balance, everyone is telling me there is no work-life balance being a real estate agent. And I'm like, come on, it's 2026. What is going on there? Is this something you experience?
Absolutely. I think, and again, I think I can speak from this space because I am still quite new, 6 years trading in real estate, and in comparison to a lot of other leading agents that have been doing it 20, 30 plus years, still quite new. But I think there's definitely a huge air of the hustle culture and being on all the time, being available 7 days a week. That's what's necessary to succeed. And I think, you've got to find your own balance. It's not given to you. It's not a 9 to 5. It's not a we start here and we finish here, or we work these particular days and these are our days off. As much as there's a lot of us that would like to do that, it just doesn't sort of play out that way. So it's definitely an industry where you have to create those for yourself. And I think, your topics tonight are wonderful in their relevance is, burnout, boundaries, better deals. I think with without boundaries, you will burn out and then deals will be affected. I think so. Finding that balance, and it's different. It looks different for everybody, right? Real estate demands a lot from you. Like there's a lot of mental and emotional capacity that you need to carry, and that's part of the job. And you need to love that too, right? You're dealing with people that are making massive decisions. You're managing emotions. You're managing fear, concern. So if you're not taking care of yourself and setting boundaries internally for you, well, how are you going to show up for the client? And how are you going to put together the best possible deal for both clients? So I think, boundaries are important, but they look different to everybody because it's capacity, right? Some people have got a larger capacity to others. So there's a huge self-understanding, I think, that's necessary in this industry. You need to know what your capacity looks like, how and where to set those boundaries to support yourself so that you can best support your client.
Yeah, wow. So every job, in a sense, do you have to evaluate when is the client going to be available? When is this likely to kind of peak in terms of getting stressful? What
Well,
does
I
it look
think you
like for
learn
you?
that over time. The more deals that you do, the more understanding that you have around, processes and particular points in time that could create friction or peak emotions. But I think communication is very important in the very early days of beginning to work with the client and understanding what their expectations are, and that you can set expectations together around, timing and communication, when that will take place and when you're available, when the best time is for them to connect, and vice versa. So clarity and communication, I think, are very important to be able to set those boundaries for yourself, because you can't be available 24/7, 7 days a week, or as we mentioned, you will burn out. And burnout doesn't necessarily look like traditional burnout, like being tired or things like that. It can affect the deal. It can affect your clarity. It can affect, the way in which you're managing your buying clients and your selling clients, which ultimately will affect the outcome of how you negotiate and how patient you are. So they all sort of tie into one another, I think.
Right. Okay, that's interesting because as, a client side person here, I
Mm.
would think I naturally would want my agent to be available whenever they're needed.
Mhm.
But I'm seeing now from what you're saying, it's like if someone's always having to juggle all the balls and they get
Mhm.
too overwhelmed with that, they're more likely to drop a ball, right? So if
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
are not burning out your agent, like pinging them with a million emails might be a bad idea. You're going to help them stay on the job and stay focused and less likely to kind of make the wrong decision for you. Is that
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to that earlier comment about communication, I think if you are clearly communicating with your client consistently and supplying them all of the information readily available at any point in time, minimizing that fear and managing their emotions, which is necessary, both people can, work in harmony with one another. Yes, as an agent, I say to my clients, contact me anytime,
you
but I
do?
may not
Wow.
be able to respond immediately. I might be in a different appointment or on a call. But again, setting those clear expectations early, like if you message me and I'm not available, I'll come back to you within an hour. Or, you can always send me an email at any time of day and I'll definitely respond within X, because the reality is that you're not sitting by your phone or your email at all of the time. We're out in different environments and doing different things. So yeah, it comes back to, I think, clarity, communication, understanding expectations, and then having some boundaries for yourself as far as self-care, really, and managing some downtime, allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to have some downtime, to switch off. For me, that looks like turning on my do not disturb at 8:30 at night. So, that's my 5 p.m. And then whatever doesn't get, responded to or finished by 8:30 at night, well, then it's going on to tomorrow's to-do list.
Yeah, it can wait. It can wait.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm actually really surprised because okay, I've not bought or sold a house, but my family has many times. The last time, my mother bought a place in the Central Coast. We just presumed when we were putting in offers, well, she was, and negotiating that 5 or 5:30ish was finish work hours. And then when I was doing this podcast talking with John, he mentioned often a negotiation will go right into the night. So
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I'm stunned to realize that. But also, I'm wondering, I mean, is that agents competing with each other unnecessarily when, I mean, honestly, that negotiation could wait till the next day, couldn't it? Like, why don't you say or almost like get together as a community or even like everyone, hey, join a petition that Skye's starting saying, we stop X o'clock because like an auction, it finishes, you can pick it
Mhm.
up. Like if it's an emergency, I get it. House is burned
Mhm.
down, something major is going on. You probably would absolutely need an out of hours response, but
Mhm.
otherwise surely the community of agents, the industry together, you could find some ways perhaps to deal with that. Is it that pressure that if you're not on the call for your client, they might say, well, okay, Skye, I'm sorry, but I'm going with Bob down the road because he'll be on tap like like a beer. I don't know, that's a
Yeah,
wrong
look, I think
example.
again, it comes down to the individual and what sort
Yeah.
of business model they're running. There's some extremely successful agents out there that are running high volume, but that demands a broader team and, all of those elements as well. I run a more of a boutique model for a number of reasons. I work in obviously prestige rural property, so that's quite time demanding as opposed to a residential setting. Things move a lot quicker and a lot faster. And real estate is really underpinned by momentum and urgency. And coming back to your comment around a negotiation, I think in a negotiation setting, it doesn't end until it ends. So that's a time where you sort of essentially are available right into the evening. You know, if I'm at the midst of a negotiation and it's 8 o'clock, I'm not turning on that do not disturb, because the momentum's there, the urgency's
Oh,
there,
okay.
and you'll definitely see that continue for as long as necessary to reach an outcome. I think with the boundaries and time settings, I think it's more about how you're structuring your day, when you're starting your mornings, when you're closing off your day, when you're giving time to yourself for downtime, whether or not that might be, an hour or two to yourself at some point in the week for a sauna or a massage, or, giving yourself permission that, you know what, like, I need to do this for me so that I can show up in the best way possible for my clients.
Right. I see.
Mm.
So I'm understanding a bit more now. So that is like that auction momentum going, that you want to
Mhm.
keep the momentum going while a client is driven to get that house before someone else does. You want to
Mhm.
sort of extend that race or play the game if you need, rather than saying, okay, we'll pick up tomorrow, when they might
Mm.
all of a sudden get cold feet. They might
Absolutely.
change
Yeah.
their mind. This is why I'm
And if you're taking
trying.
care of yourself and you've got boundaries in the right areas of your life, those moments in your business where you are required to give more and be more and do more, you've got the capacity to do that, because there's boundaries in other areas that ensuring that your energy levels are high, that you're vibrating high, that you've got clarity, and then there's no issue. I think it's when there's not boundaries in other areas of your daily structure that's when burnout happens, and that's when balls get dropped. That's when deals can fall over. That's when you're not present, and the client, either or the seller or the buyer, can be affected.
Right. So it's like you're managing a very flexible situation, but you've got to have some boundaries within that flexibility. Otherwise, it's all just it's all
Well,
just swimming and gone to the dog.
I think boundaries in real estate equals structure, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, I do this and I do it at this time on this day. And if it's not done then, well, then it moves to here, so structure and boundaries sort of mesh together, I think, in this industry.
Yeah, that is true. So I'm sure you've got some stories, some real life examples on that, and our listeners love the real life examples because many of them can totally relate to it. Can you throw some examples of, the good situations where, boundaries worked and where they didn't, or when, there were no boundaries and it all cost you a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in my first few years when, I came into an industry again, like that I said, supports a hustle culture. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what you've got to do. You've got to be on all the time. You've got to be available 24/7, 7 days a week. We don't have days off, etc. And I was like, okay, I want to be successful. I want to do what's got to be done, without actually assessing myself or looking what success looked like for me and what I actually wanted to achieve, and how I wanted to show up for my clients. There were definitely, some early deals there where I pushed myself too far, which then saw me not be able to support the client and their emotions and their fears and concerns, because my mind wasn't clear. I'd probably, worked 8 or 10 days straight, thinking that that was the best thing I could do for the situation, when ultimately, when it got to the point of negotiation and I was tired and my clarity wasn't there and I wasn't on, there was probably, times in which I could have gone harder, I could have done better, and I could have pushed more. But because I was in a state of fatigue, that didn't allow me to produce the best ultimate outcome for my client. And you learn that very quickly. And I think that's where you learn, okay, this is not sustainable. What does sustainability look like? And how can I put that structure and those boundaries into my business so that I'm always showing up at my maximum capacity with maximum energy, maximum emotional capacity to deliver outcomes for your clients.
And I can imagine there must be some situations where you don't imagine things will come up and you think you're on track, and then you have fires to put out, so to speak. So you end up you end up I don't know how to explain it. You end up burning yourself out or being in risk. I'm not explaining well. Let me give you an example. When I was doing staging, I thought, yep, on track. We had a house in the Central Coast. The agent said, actually love to list it Tuesday. Do you think you could be ready for that? And I thought, oh, it's a few days before I'd expected, but sure. What I hadn't done was plan in any contingency for things to go wrong. And that night, it took me more time. It was one of my first jobs, so that's fine. But then a man turned up outside at the door with a python.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. It was a very odd situation. He came to sort of threaten me with a python, and I did not quite understand what the hell was going on.
Oh my God.
The short story of the long story is he thought I was robbing the house. Now,
and that was his weapon, a python?
Yes, a long, 2 to 3 meter long python that he was kind of, threatening me with. It was, uncaged. He was holding it by the very tip of its tail, like pushing it at me, going, go. But, I was moving things out of the house, so he'd got the wrong impression as he'd walked past sometime earlier, but also moving things in.
Oh my God.
So he was.
I would have been frozen. There's like snakes. No, not a fan. Not a fan.
Well, not only did I have to deal with him at that time, but then after, when I didn't run around, screaming and, he thought, okay, I haven't dealt with her properly. He then called the police and, said there's this person robbing this house. They came round. So I then had the police to deal with. And then, I had to call the real estate agent after hours. Now, I felt so bad about that, but I thought this is a really good time to confirm that I am a contractor. And he was extremely understanding about it and said, oh, absolutely. But what I hadn't counted on as well was that rest of the night I was kind of in shock. I was trying to finish staging the house, and I finished staging that house at about 6:30 the next morning. I was there doing it all night.
Oh, no.
And, I'd had to have that break to sort of talk to the police and, get my head back together. But, it was not a great thing to be doing that. And, later I did a great job. And I have to say, the actual house ended up selling for over $200,000 more than expected. And I had to deal with the python.
And that's funny that you say that, because I think again, the mentality around, yes, everything, fearing saying no is a big thing in our industry as well. Like, it's like, you can say no. You can say, I absolutely love to meet with you, but that time doesn't work. Would this time suit? Or, give maybe a couple of other options. I think you definitely, especially when you're starting out, you feel as if you've got to say yes to everything and everyone.
And it could have waited. He did not have to have it listed on that day of the week. The photographer could have been booked for the next day. It could have still been listed by this Saturday. But there was that urgency of, interest rates are changing. We want to get this on the market now. And when all of these things compound, disaster struck with a happy outcome for the client. But
I'm going to be thinking about that python for a while.
I know. But anyway, it sounds to me like you have that negotiation now with the client sort of upfront, and you find out from them what their schedule's like, what yours is like, and you kind of work with it. And the industry is never going to have that petition because, I get it now. It's like an auction continuing all the time for you when it isn't an auction, right?
It is. And look, it's the industry is just definitely not for everybody, right? But that's like any role, or not everyone wants to be a nurse, not everyone wants to be a police officer, not everyone wants to be a real estate agent, all for different reasons, right? So I think you've got to love it. real estate is something that you've really got to love. And all the agents that I know and I interact with, they love what they do, and myself included. So, again, it's about finding what works for you, understanding clients' expectations, creating clear communications so that everybody can work in harmony and the best results can be achieved.
Thank you so much, Skye. It is late, so I must let you go. You're working after hours, but it's just been a joy. I'm so glad you could join us. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening in. I'm Wendy Clare, and this series is proudly supported by Juge Interiors. Join us next week for another episode of Meet the Agent podcast.